Hello, I'm Alice and I'm Research and Documentation Assistant for Archaeology at Hull and East Riding Museum. And today we're going to be having a look at medieval buildings focusing on the Queen Street timbers. Now these medieval timbers come from a house that was at 85 Queen Street in the Fruit Market area of Hull. We're fortunate that in 1973, when the building was demolished, archaeologists were there recording the timbers as they were in the house and also rescuing some of the timbers for the museum. So here we have the end wall frame of the building. You can see it has vertical posts as well as horizontal beams that are connected together by mortise and tenon joints. So this is where a hole is created on one side of the joint in one of the beams, and the other side has a piece that juts out to correspond to that hole. That's then placed into the hole, and then a wooden peg is then driven through the joint to keep it in place. We can also see that there are those big gaps in the frame. Obviously during the medieval period they wouldn't have been there. They would have been filled in. Now usually that would have been done with what's known as wattle and daub, which is where you have a series of small upright posts that then had thin flexible wood woven between them. Now if you look at the horizontal beams there, you can see that there aren't any holes, which means we know that there weren't any vertical posts inserted, so it's not wattle and daub. However, if you look very closely, you might just about be able to make it out on the photograph. There's a deep groove running down the vertical upright posts. This suggests that maybe it was infilled with thin strips of oak, so oak laths or possibly oak planking. The other thing we do know from the photographs the archaeologists took is that at some point later on in the building's history, someone had decided to remove some of that from part of the building and decided to infill it with a different material. They filled it in with brick, which on reflection wasn't necessarily the best idea at the time, because brick retains moisture and it's also a very poor insulator. And unfortunately, when the archaeologists came across this, the timber frame in that section had almost completely rotted away. They described it as being almost like soil. So if you decide to head out and build yourself a timber frame building, don't head for the bricks to infill it. Now the other interesting part of the Queen Street building is its roof structure. So typically in the north of England you'd expect to see what's known as a king post being used. However, in this building we see a crown post. Now structures like this regionally are usually seen in the southeast. They're not quite as common in the north. So this is possibly someone saying, hey, look at me, like I'm associated with the wealthy southeast of England, especially since at the time roof structures probably would have been open to the room, so people would have been able to see them. The other interesting thing is this particular crown post has been compared to buildings in York, and so it can be dated roughly to 1350 AD, which gives us a really good indication of when the building was built. So the other great thing about the Queen Street timbers is that in 1889, the artist F.S. Smith drew the building for us. So we can see that it was a 3-storey high building and that it was jettied. So when we call something jettied, we mean that the bottom story is set back a little bit from the road and then the wall comes up, it juts out a bit and then it comes up again. And we can see this in the drawing because what's happened at some later date after the medieval period is someone's decided, there's my front wall, I'm going to extend it a little bit further out. So they've extended it out and then put their shop window in the front to be able to display their goods. And we can tell this because if you look closely, you can see that the doorway is set a little bit back away from the street. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about the Queen Street timbers today, and do make sure to keep checking out whole museums and exploring our collections.